Benway. So I'm assigned to engage the services of Dr. Benway for Islam Inc. Benway is a manipulator and coordinator of symbol systems, an expert on all phases of interrogation, brainwashing, and control. I have not seen Benway since his precipitate departure from Anexia, where his assignment had been TD, total demoralization. Benway's first act was to abolish concentration camps, mass arrest, and, except under certain limited and special circumstances, the use of torture. I deplore brutality, he said. It's not efficient. On the other hand, prolonged mistreatment, short of physical violence, gives rise, when skillfully applied, to anxiety and a feeling of special guilt. A few rules or other guiding principles are to be borne in mind. The subject must not realize that the mistreatment is a deliberate attack of an anti-human enemy on his personal identity. He must be made to feel that he deserves any treatment he receives, because there is something, never specified, horribly wrong with him. The naked need of the control addicts must be decently covered by an arbitrary and intricate bureaucracy, so that the subject cannot contact his enemy direct. As regards the interrogation of suspects, Benway has this to say. While in general I avoid the use of torture, torture localizes the opponent and mobilizes resistance. The threat of torture is useful to induce in the subject the appropriate feeling of helplessness and gratitude to the interrogator for withholding it. And torture can be employed to advantage as a penalty when the subject is far enough along with the treatment to accept punishment as deserved. To this end, I devised several forms of disciplinary procedure. One was known as the switchboard. Electric drills that can be turned on at any time are clamped against the subject's teeth, and he is instructed to operate an arbitrary switchboard, to put certain connections in certain sockets in response to bells and lights. Every time he makes a mistake, the drills are turned on for 20 seconds. The signals are gradually speeded up beyond his reaction time. Half an hour on the switchboard, and the subject breaks down like an overloaded thinking machine. The study of thinking machines teaches us more about the brain than we can learn by introspective methods. Western man is externalizing himself in the form of gadgets. Squatting on old bones and excrement and rusty iron, in a white blaze of heat, a panorama of naked idiots stretches to the horizon. Complete silence. Their speech centers are destroyed, except for the crackle of sparks and the popping of singed flesh as they apply electrodes up and down the spine. White smoke of burning flesh hangs in the motionless air. A group of children have tied an idiot to a post with barbed wire and built a fire between his legs, and stand watching with bestial curiosity as the flames lick his thighs. His flesh jerks in the fire with insect agony. I digress, as usual. Pending more precise knowledge of brain electronics, drugs remain an essential tool of the interrogator in his assault on the subject's personal identity. Many subjects are vulnerable to sexual humiliation. Nakedness, stimulation with aphrodisiacs, constant supervision to embarrass subject and prevent relief of masturbation. Erections during sleep automatically turn on an enormous vibrating electric buzzer that throws the subject out of bed into cold water, thus reducing the incidence of wet dreams to a minimum. Kicks to hypnotize a priest and tell him he's about to consummate a hypostatic union with a lamb, then steer a randy old sheep up his ass. After that, the interrogator can gain complete hypnotic control. The subject will come at his whistle, shit on the floor if he but say, "Open sesame." Needless to say, the sex humiliation angle is contraindicated for overt homosexuals. I mean, let's keep our eye on the ball here and remember the old party line. Never know who's listening in. I recall this one kid I conditioned to shit at sight of me. Then I wash his ass and screw him. It was real tasty, and he was a lovely fella, too. And sometimes a subject will burst into boyish tears because he can't keep from ejaculating when you screw him. Well, as you can plainly see, the possibilities are endless, like meandering paths in a great, big, beautiful garden. We are walking down a long, white hall. Benway's voice drifts into my consciousness from no particular place. A disembodied voice that is sometimes loud and clear, sometimes barely audible, like music down a windy street. We must never forget our glorious Samian heritage. Doc Brubeck was party in a second part. A retired abortionist and junk pusher, he was a veterinarian actually, recalled to service during the manpower shortage. Well, Doc had been in the hospital kitchen all morning, goosing the nurses and tanking up on coal gas and clim. And just before the operation, he sneaked a double shot of nutmeg to nerve himself up. I had a yahe hang over me and in no condition to take any of Braubeck's shit. First thing he comes on with, I should start the incision from the back instead of the front, muttering some garbled nonsense about being sure to cut out the gallbladder and would fuck up the meat. Thought he was on the farm cleaning a chicken. I told him to go put his head back in the oven, whereupon he had the effrontery to push my hand, severing the patient's femoral artery. Blood spurted up and blinded the anesthetist, who ran out through the hall screaming. Brubeck tried to knee me in the groin, and I managed to hamstring him with my scalpel. He crawled about the floor, stabbing at my feet and legs. Violet, that's my baboon assistant, only woman I ever cared a damn about, really wigged. I climbed up on the table and poised myself to jump on Brubeck with both feet and stomp him when the cops rushed in. Well, this rumble in the operating room, this unspeakable occurrence, as the super put it, you might say was the blow-off. The Wolfpack was closing for the kill. A crucifixion, that's the only word for it. Of course, I'd made a few dumb heights here and there, who hasn't? There was the time me and the anesthetist drank up all the ether and the patient came up on us. And I was accused of cutting the cocaine with Saniflush. Violet did it, actually. We had to protect her, of course. So the wind-up is we are all drummed out of the industry. Not that Violet was a bona fide croaker. Neither was Brubeck. For that matter, even my own certificate was called in question. But Violet knew more medicine than the Mayo Clinic. She had an extraordinary intuition and a high sense of duty. So there I was, flat on my ass with no certificate. Should I turn to another trade? No, doctoring was in my blood. I managed to keep up my habit performing cut-rate abortions in subway toilets. I even descended to hustling pregnant women in the public streets. It was positively unethical. Then I met a great guy, Placenta Juan, the afterbirth tycoon. The black meat. Traffickers in the black meat. Flesh of the giant aquatic black centipede, sometimes attaining a length of 6 feet, found in a land of black rocks and iridescent brown lagoons, exhibit paralyzed crustaceans in camouflage pockets of the plaza, visible only to the meat eaters. The meat cafe occupies one side of the plaza, a maze of kitchens, restaurants, sleeping cubicles, perilous iron balconies and basements opening into the underground baths. On stools covered in white satin sit naked mugwumps, sucking translucent, colored syrups through alabaster straws. Mugwumps have no liver and nourish themselves exclusively on sweets. Thin, purple-blue lips cover a razor-sharp beak of black bone, with which they frequently tear each other to shreds in fights over clients. These creatures secrete an addicting fluid from their erect penises, which prolongs life by slowing metabolism. In fact, all longevity agents have proved addicting an exact ratio to their effectiveness in prolonging life. Addicts of mugwump fluid are known as reptiles. A number of these flow over chairs with their flexible bones and black-pink flesh, a fan of green cartilage covered with hollow rectal hairs through which the reptiles absorb the fluid, sprouts from behind each ear. The fans, which move from time to time, touched by invisible currents, serve also some form of communication known only to reptiles. During the biennial panics, when the raw-peeled dream police storm the city, the mugwumps take refuge in the deepest crevices of the wall, sealing themselves in clay cubicles, and remain for weeks in biostasis. In these days of great terror, the reptiles dart about faster and faster, scream past each other at supersonic speed, their flexible skulls flapping in black winds of insect agony. The dream police disintegrate in globs of rotten ectoplasm, swept away by an old junkie, coughing and spitting in the sick morning. The mugwump man comes with alabaster jars of fluid, and the reptiles get smoothed out. The air is once again still and clear as glycerin. The sailor spotted his reptile. He drifted over and ordered a green syrup. The reptile had a little round disc mouth of brown gristle, expressionless green eyes, almost covered by a thin membrane of eyelid. The sailor waited an hour before the creature picked up his presence. "Any eggs for Fats?" he asked, his words stirring through the reptile's fan hairs. It took 2 hours for the reptile to raise 3 pink, transparent fingers covered with black fuzz. Several meat-eaters lay in vomit, too weak to move. The black meat is like a tainted cheese, overpoweringly delicious and nauseating, so that the eaters eat and vomit and eat again until they fall exhausted. A painted youth slithered in and seized one of the great black claws, sending the sweet, sick smell curling through the cafe. Dawson's Rumpus Rum. A Near East mugwump sits naked on a bar stool covered in pink silk. He licks warm honey from a crystal goblet with a long black tongue. His genitals are perfectly formed. Circumcised cock, black, shiny pubic hairs. His lips are thin and purple-blue like the lips of a penis. His eyes blank with insect calm. The mugwump has no liver, maintaining himself exclusive on sweets. Mugwump pushed a slender blonde youth to a couch and stripped him expertly. "Stand up and turn around," he orders in telepathic pictographs. He ties the boy's hands behind him with a red silk cord. "Tonight we make it all the way." "No, no," screams the boy. "Yes, yes." Cocks ejaculate in silent yes. Mugwump part silk curtains, reveal a teakwood gallows against lighted screen of red flint. Gallows is on a dais of Aztec mosaics. The boy crumples to his knees with a long "oh," shitting and pissing in terror. He feels the shit warm between his thighs. A great wave of hot blood swells his lips and throat. His body contracts into a fetal position and sperm spurts hot into his face. The mugwump dips hot perfumed water from an alabaster bowl, pensively washes the boy's ass and cock, drying him with a soft blue towel. A warm wind plays over the boy's body and the hairs float free. The mugwump puts a hand under the boy's chest and pulls him to his feet. Holding him by both pinioned elbows, propels him up the steps and under the noose. He stands in front of the boy, holding the noose in both hands. The boy looks into mugwump eyes blank as obsidian mirrors, pools of black blood, glory holes in a toilet wall closing on the last erection. The mugwump slips the noose over the boy's head and tightens the knot caressingly behind the left ear. The boy's penis is retracted, his balls tight. He looks straight ahead, breathing deeply. The mugwump sidles around the boy, goosing him and caressing his genitals in hieroglyphs of mockery. He moves in behind the boy with a series of bumps and shoves his cock up the boy's ass. He stands there, moving in circular gyrations. The guests shush each other, nudge and giggle. Suddenly, the mugwump pushes the boy forward into space, free of his cock. He steadies the boy with hands on the hip bones, reaches up with his stylized hieroglyph hands, and snaps the boy's neck. A shudder passes through the boy's body. His penis rises in 3 great surges, pulling his pelvis up, ejaculates immediately. Green sparks explode behind his eyes. A sweet toothache pain shoots through his neck down the spine to the groin, contracting the body in spasms of delight. His whole body squeezes out through his cock. A final spasm throws a great spurt of sperm across the red screen, like a shooting star. The boy falls with soft, gutty suction through a maze of penny arcades and dirty pictures. A sharp turd shoots clean out his ass. Farts shake his slender body. Skyrockets burst in green clusters across a great river. He hears the faint putt-putt of a motorboat in jungle twilight under silent wings of the anaphylos mosquito. The mugwump pulls the boy back onto his cock. The boy squirms, impaled like a speared fish. The mugwump swings on the boy's back, his body contracting in fluid waves. Blood flows down the boy's chin from his mouth, half open, sweet and sulky in death. The mugwump falls with a fluid, sated plop. The market. Panorama of the city of Interzone. A composite city where all human potentials are spread out in a vast silent market. Minarets, palms, mountains, jungle, a sluggish river jumping with vicious fish. Vast weed-grown parks where boys lie in the grass, play cryptic games. Not a locked door in the city. Anyone comes into your room at any time. The chief of police is a Chinese who picks his teeth and listens to denunciations presented by a lunatic. Every now and then, the Chinese takes the toothpick out of his mouth and looks at the end of it. Hipsters with smooth, copper-colored faces lounge in doorways, twisting shrunk heads on gold chains, their faces blank with an insect's unseeing calm. All houses in the city are joined. Houses of sod. High mountain Mongols blink in smoky doorways. Houses of bamboo and teak. Houses of adobe, stone, and red brick. South Pacific and Maori houses. Houses and trees and riverboats. Wood houses 100 feet long sheltering entire tribes. Houses of boxes and corrugated iron where old men sit in rotten rags cooking down canned heat. Great rusty iron racks rising 200 feet in the air from swamps and rubbish, with perilous partitions built on multi-level platforms and hammocks swinging over the void. The city is visited by epidemics of violence, and the untended dead are eaten by vultures in the streets. Albinos blink in the sun. Boys sit in trees, languidly masturbate. People eaten by unknown diseases watch the passerby with evil, knowing eyes. In the city market is the meat cafe. Followers of obsolete, unthinkable trades doodling in Etruscan. Addicts of drugs not yet synthesized. Pushers of souped-up harmelin. Junk reduced to pure habit, offering precarious vegetable serenity. Liquids to induce Lata. Tithonian longevity serums. Black marketeers of World War III. Excisers of telepathic sensitivity, osteopaths of the spirit, investigators of infractions denounced by bland, paranoid chess players, servers of fragmentary warrants taken down in hebephrenic shorthand, charging unspeakable mutilations of the spirit, bureaucrats of spectral departments, officials of unconstituted police states, a lesbian dwarf who has perfected Operation Bangu Tote, the lung erection that strangles a sleeping enemy, sellers of orgone tanks and relaxing machines, brokers of exquisite dreams and memories, tested on the sensitized cells of junk sickness and bartered for raw materials of the will. Doctors skilled in the treatment of diseases dormant in the black dust of ruined cities, gathering virulence in the white blood of eyeless worms, feeling slowly to the surface in the human host. Maladies of the ocean floor and the stratosphere, maladies of the laboratory and atomic war, a place where the unknown past and the emergent future meet in a vibrating, soundless hum, larval entities waiting for a live one. A funeral passes through the market. Black coffin, Arabic inscriptions in filigreed silver, carried by 4 pallbearers, procession of mourners singing the funeral song. Clem and Jody falling beside them, carrying coffin. The corpse of a hog bursts out of it. The hog is dressed in a jalaba. A keef pipe juts from its mouth. One hoof holds a packet of feezy pictures. A mezuzah hangs about its neck. Inscribed on the coffin, this was the noblest Arab of them all. They sing hideous parody of the funeral song in false Arabic. Jody can do a fake Chinese spiel that'll just kill you, like a hysterical ventriloquist dummy. In fact, he precipitated an anti-foreign riot in Shanghai that claimed 3,000 casualties. Stand up, Gertie, and show respect for the local gooks. I suppose one should. My dear, I'm working on the most marvelous invention. A boy who disappears as soon as you come, leaving a smell of burning leaves and a sound effect of distant train whistles. This you gotta hear. Boy in Los Angeles, 15-year-old. Father decided it's time the boy have his first piece of ass. Boy's lying on the lawn reading comic books. Father go out and say, "Son, here's $20. I want you to go to a good whore and get a piece of ass off her." So they drive to this plush jump joint. And the father say, "All right, son, you're on your own. So ring the bell, and when the woman come, give her the $20 and tell her you want a piece of ass. Solid pop." So about 15 minutes later, the boy comes out. "Well, son, did you get a piece of ass?" "Yeah. This gash comes to the door and I say I want a piece of ass and lay the double sauceky on her. We go up to her trap and she removed her dry goods. So I switch my blade and cut a big hunk off her ass. She raised up beef like I am reduced to pull off one shoe and beat her brains out. Then I hump her for kicks." Another installment in the adventures of Clem Snide, the private asshole. So I walk in the joint and this female hustler sits at the bar. And I think, oh, God, you're pool deluxe already. I mean, it's like I see the gash before. So I don't pay her no mind at first. Then I dig she is rubbing her legs together and working her feet up behind her head. Shoves it down to give herself a douche job with a gadget sticks out of her nose, the way a body can't help but notice. Irish, half Chinese and half Negro, addicted to dehydroxyheroin, takes a shot every 15 minutes, to which end she leaves droppers and needles sticking out all over her. The needles rust in her dry flesh, which here and there has grown completely over a joint to form a smooth green-brown wen. On the table in front of her is a samovar of tea and a 20-pound hamper of brown sugar. No one has ever seen her eat anything else. It is only just before a shot that she hears what anyone says or talks herself. Then she makes some flat, factual statement relative to her own person. my asshole is occluding. My cunt got terrible green juices. Iris is one of Benway's projects. The human body can run on sugar alone, goddammit. I'm aware that certain of my learned colleagues who are tempted to belittle my genius work claim that I put vitamins and proteins into Iris's sugar clandestinely. I challenge these nameless assholes to crawl up out of their latrines and run a spot analysis on Iris's sugar and her tea. Iris is a wholesome American cunt. I deny categorically that she nourishes herself on semen. And let me take this opportunity to state that I'm a reputable scientist, not a charlatan, a lunatic, or a pretended worker of miracles. I never claimed that Iris could subsist exclusively on photosynthesis. I did not say she could breathe in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. I confess I have been tempted to experiment, being, of course, restrained by my medical ethics. In short, the vile slanders of my creeping opponents will inevitably fall back onto them and come to roost like a homing stool pigeon. Did I ever tell you about the man who taught his asshole to talk? His whole abdomen would move up and down, you dig, farting out the words. It was unlike anything I ever heard. This ass talk had a sort of gut frequency. It hit you right down there like you gotta go. You know, when the old colon gives you the elbow and you feel sort of cold inside and you know all you have to do is turn loose? Well, this talking hits you right down there, a bubbly, thick, stagnant sound, a sound you could smell. This man worked for a carnival, you dig, and to start with, it was like a novelty ventriloquist act. Real funny, too, at first. He had a number he called a better old. It was a scream, I tell you. I forget most of it, but it was clever. Like, "Oh, say, are you still down there, old thing?" "No, I had to go relieve myself." After a while, the ass started talking on its own. He would go in without anything prepared, and his ass would ad-lib and toss the gags back at him every time. Then it developed sort of teeth like little raspy incurving hooks and started eating. He thought this was cute at first and built an act around it, but the asshole would eat its way through his pants and start talking on the street, shouting out it wanted equal rights. Yeah, it would get drunk, too, and have crying jags. Nobody loved it, and it wanted to be kissed same as any other mouth. Finally, it talked all the time, day and night. You could hear him for blocks, screaming at it to shut up and beating it with his fist and sticking candles up it. But nothing did any good. And the asshole said to him, "It's you who will shut up in the end, not me. Because we don't need you around here anymore. I can talk and eat and shit." After that, he began waking up in the morning with a transparent jelly like a tadpole's tail all over his mouth. This jelly was what the scientists call UNDT, undifferentiated tissue, which can grow into any kind of flesh on the human body. He would tear it off his mouth, and the pieces would stick to his hands like burning gasoline jelly and grow there. Grow anywhere on him, a glob of it fell. So finally his mouth sealed over and the whole head would have amputated spontaneous. Did you know that this condition occurs in parts of Africa and only among Negroes where the little toe amputates spontaneously? Except for the eyes, you dig. That's one thing the asshole couldn't do was see. It needed the eyes. But nerve connections were blocked and infiltrated and atrophied, so the brain couldn't give orders anymore. It was trapped in the skull, sealed off. For a while you could see the silent, helpless suffering of the brain behind the eyes. Then finally the brain must have died, because the eyes went out, and there was no more feeling in them than a crab's eye on the end of a stalk. You ever dig the Mayan codices? I figure it like this. The priests, about 1% of the population, made with one-way telepathic broadcasts, instructing the workers what to feel and when. A telepathic sender has to send all the time. He can never receive, because if he receives, that means someone else has feelings of his own, could douse up his continuity. The sender has to send all the time, but he can't ever recharge himself by contact. Sooner or later, he's got no feelings to send. You can't have feelings alone. Not alone like the sender is alone. And you dig there can only be one sender at one place time. Finally, the screen goes dead. The sender has turned into a huge centipede. So the workers come in on the beam and burn the centipede and elect a new sender by consensus of the general will. The Mayans were limited by isolation. Now one sender could control the planet. You see, control can never be a means to any practical end. It can never be a means to anything but more control. Like junk. interzone. The zone is a single vast building. The rooms are made of a plastic cement that bulges to accommodate people, but when too many crowd into one room, there is a soft plop, and someone squeezes through the wall right into the next house. The next bed, that is, since the rooms are mostly bed where the business of the zone is transacted. A hum of sex and commerce shakes the zone like a vast hive. Interzone Imports Unlimited, which consists of Marvy and Life the Unlucky, had latched on to the KY deal. Marvy had been in Interzone since the year before one, as he put it. He had been retired from some unspecified position in the State Department for the good of the service. Obviously, he had once been very good-looking in a crew-cut college boy way, but his face had sagged and formed lumps under the chin like melting paraffin. He was getting heavy around the hips. Life the Unlucky was a tall, thin Norwegian with a patch over one eye. His face congealed in a permanent, ingratiating smirk. Behind him lay an epic saga of unsuccessful enterprises. He had failed at raising frogs, chinchilla, Siamese fighting fish, Ramian culture pearls. He had attempted, variously and without success, to promote the lovebird two-in-a-coffin cemetery, to corner the condom market during the rubber shortage, to run a mail-order whorehouse, to issue penicillin as a patent medicine. He had followed disastrous betting systems in the casinos of Europe and the racetracks of the U.S. His reverses in business were matched by the incredible mischances of his personal life. His front teeth had been stomped out by bestial American sailors in Brooklyn. Vultures had eaten out an eye when he drank a pint of paregoric and passed out in a Panama City park. He had been trapped between floors in an elevator for 5 days with an oil-burning junk habit, and sustained an attack of DTs while stowing away in a footlocker. Then there was the time he collapsed with strangulated intestines, perforated ulcers, and peritonitis in Cairo, and the hospital was so crowded they bedded him in the latrine, and the Greek surgeon goofed and sewed up a live monkey in him, and he was gang-fucked by the Arab attendants. And one of the orderlies stole the penicillin, substituting Saniflush. The time he got clap in his ass, and a self-righteous English doctor cured him with an enema of hot sulfuric acid. Hauser and O'Brien. When they walked in on me that morning at 8 o'clock, I knew it was my last chance, my only chance. But they didn't know. How could they? Just a routine pickup. But not quite routine. Hauser had been eating breakfast when the lieutenant called. I want you and your partner to pick up a man named Lee. William Lee, on your way downtown. He's in the Hotel Lamprey, 103rd, just off Broadway. Yeah, I know where it is. I remember him, too. Good. Room 606. Just pick him up. Don't take time to shake the place down. Except bring in all books, letters, manuscripts, anything printed, typed, or written. Catch? Catch? But what's the angle? Books? Just do it. The lieutenant hung up. Hauser and O'Brien. They had been on the city narcotics squad for 20 years. Old-timers like me. I'd been on the junk for 16 years. They weren't bad as laws go. At least O'Brien wasn't. O'Brien was a con man and Hauser the tough guy. A vaudeville team. Hauser had a way of hitting you before he said anything, just to break the ice. Then O'Brien gives you an old gold. Just like a cop to smoke old gold somehow. And starts putting down a cop con that was really bottled in bond. Not a bad guy, and I didn't want to do it, but it was my only chance. I was just tying up for my morning shot when they walked in with a passkey. It was a special kind you can use even when the door is locked from the inside with a key in the lock. On the table in front of me was a packet of junk, spike, syringe, alcohol, cotton, and a glass of water. "Well, well," says O'Brien. "Long time no see, eh?" "Put on your coat, Lee," says Hauser. He had his gun out. He always has it out when he makes the pinch for the psychological effect, and to forestall a rush for toilet, sink, or window. "Can I take a bang first, boys?" I asked. "There's plenty here for evidence." I was wondering how I could get to my suitcase if they said no. The case wasn't locked, but Hauser had the gun in his hand. "He wants a shot," said Hauser. "Now you know we can't do that, Bill," said O'Brien in his sweet con voice, dragging out the name with an oily, insinuating familiarity, brutal and obscene. He meant, of course, "What can you do for us, Bill?" He looked at me and smiled. The smile stayed there too long, hideous and naked, the smile of an old painted pervert, gathering all the negative evil of O'Brien's ambiguous function. "Well, I could set up Marty Steele for you," I said. I knew they wanted Marty bad. He'd been pushing for 5 years, and they couldn't hang one on him. Marty was an old-timer and very careful about who he served. He had to know a man and know him well before he would pick up his money. Now, no one can say they ever did time because of me. My rep is perfect. But still, Marty wouldn't serve me because he didn't know me long enough. That's how skeptical Marty was. "Marty," said O'Brien, "can you score from him?" "Sure I can." They were suspicious. A man can't be a cop all his life without developing a special set of intuitions. "Okay," said Hauser finally, "but you'd better deliver, Lee." "I'll deliver all right. Believe me, I appreciate this." I tied up for a shot, my hands trembling with eagerness, an art-type dope fiend. "Just an old junkie, boys, a harmless old shaking wreck of a junkie." That's the way I put it down. As I had hoped, Hauser looked away when I started probing for a vein. It's a wildly unpretty spectacle. O'Brien was sitting on the arm of a chair, smoking an old gold, looking out the window with a dreamy what I'll do when I get my pension look. I hit a vein right away. A column of blood shot up into the syringe. for an instant, sharp and solid as a red cord. I pressed the plunger down with my thumb, feeling the junk pound through my veins to feed 1,000,000 junk-hungry cells, to bring strength and alertness to every nerve and muscle. They were not watching me. I filled the syringe with alcohol. Hauser was juggling his snub-nosed detective special, a Colt, and looking around the room. He could smell danger like an animal. With his left hand, he pushed the closet door open and glanced inside. My stomach contracted. I thought, if he looks in the suitcase now, I'm done. Hauser turned to me abruptly. "You through yet?" he snarled. "You better not try to shit us on Marty." The words came out so ugly he surprised and shocked himself. I picked up the syringe full of alcohol, twisting the needle to make sure it was tight. "Just 2 seconds," I said. I squirted a thin jet of alcohol, whipping it across his eyes with a sideways shake of the syringe. He let out a bellow of pain. I could see him pawing at his eyes with his left hand, like he was tearing off an invisible bandage. As I dropped to the floor on one knee, reaching for my suitcase, I pushed the suitcase open, and my left hand closed around the gun butt. I felt the concussion of Hauser's shot before I heard it. His slug slammed into the wall behind me. Shooting from the floor, I snapped 2 quick shots into Hauser's belly, where his vest had pulled up, showing an inch of white shirt. He grunted in a way I could feel and doubled forward. Stiff with panic, O'Brien's hand was tearing at the gun in his shoulder holster. I clamped my other hand around my gun wrist to steady it for the long pull, and shot him in the middle of his red forehead, about 2 inches below the silver hairline. His hair had been gray the last time I saw him. That was about 15 years ago, my first arrest. His eyes went out. He fell off the chair onto his face. My hands were already reaching for what I needed, sweeping my notebooks into a briefcase with my works, junk, and a box of shells. I stuck the gun into my belt and stepped out into the corridor, putting on my coat. I could hear the desk clerk and the bellboy pounding up the stairs. I took the self-service elevator down, walked through the empty lobby into the street. I spent the night in the Everhard baths. Homosexuality is the best all-around cover story an agent can use, where a snarling Italian attendant creates such an unnerving atmosphere, sweeping the dormitory with infrared see-in-the-dark field glasses. Walked out in the precise morning and bought a paper. Nothing. I called from a drugstore phone booth and asked for narcotics. "Lieutenant Gonzalez, who's calling?" "I want to speak to O'Brien." A moment of static, dangling wires, broken connections. "Nobody of that name in this department." "Who are you?" "Well, let me speak to Hauser." "Look, mister, no O'Brien, no Hauser in this bureau. Now, what do you want?" "Look, this is important. I've got info on a big shipment of H coming in. I want to talk to Hauser or O'Brien. I don't do business with anybody else. Hold on, I'll connect you with Alcibiades." I began to wonder if there was an Anglo-Saxon name left in the department. "I want to speak to Hauser or O'Brien." "How many times I have to tell you? No Hauser, no O'Brien in this department. Now, who is this calling?" I hung up and took a taxi out of the area. In the cab, I realized what had happened. I had been occluded from space-time like an eel's ass occludes when he stops eating on the way to Sargasso. Locked out. Never again would I have a key, a point of intersection. The heat was off me from here on out. Relegated with Hauser and O'Brien to a landlocked junk past where heroin is always $28 an ounce, and you can score for yen pox in the chink laundry of Sioux Falls. After-feed preface. Wouldn't you? Why all this waste paper getting the people from one place to another? Perhaps to spare the reader stress of sudden space shifts and keep him gentle. And so, a ticket is bought, a taxi called, a plane boarded. There is only one thing a writer can write about: what is in front of his senses at the moment of writing. I am a recording instrument. I do not presume to impose story, plot, continuity. Insofar as I succeed in direct recording of certain areas of psychic process, I may have limited function. I am not an entertainer. Possession, they call it. Sometimes an entity jumps in the body, outlines waver in yellow-orange jelly, and hands move to disembowel the passing whore, or strangle the neighbor child, in hope of alleviating a chronic housing shortage. As if I was usually there, but subject to goof now and again. Wrong. I am never here. Never, that is, fully in possession, but somehow in a position to forestall ill-advised moves. Patrolling is, in fact, my principal occupation. No matter how tight security, I am always somewhere outside giving orders, and inside this straitjacket of jelly that gives and stretches, but always reforms ahead of every movement, thought, impulse, stamped with the seal of alien inspection. Writers talk about the sweet, sick smell of death, whereas any junkie can tell you that death has no smell. At the same time, a smell that shuts off breath and stops blood. Colorless, no smell of death. No one can breathe and smell it through pink convolutions and black blood filters of flesh. The death smell is unmistakably a smell and complete absence of smell. Smell absence hits the nose first, because all organic life has smell. Stopping of smell is felt like darkness to the eyes, silence to the ears, stress and weightlessness to the balance and location sense. You always smell it and give it out for others to smell during junk withdrawal. A kicking junkie can make a whole apartment unlivable with his death smell. But a good airing will stink the place up again so a body can breathe. You also smell it during one of those oil burner habits that suddenly starts jumping geometric, like a topping forest fire. Cure is always, let go, jump. Naked Lunch is a blueprint, a how-to book. Black insect lusts open into vast other planet landscapes. Abstract concepts bare as algebra narrow down to a black turd or a pair of aging cojones. How to extend levels of experience? By opening the door at the end of a long hall. Doors that only open in silence. Naked Lunch demands silence from the reader. Otherwise, he is taking his own pulse. Robert Christie knew the answering service. Kill the old cunts, keep pubic hairs in his locket. Wouldn't you? Robert Christie, mass strangler of women. Sounds like a daisy chain hanged in 1953. Jack the Ripper, literal swordsman of the 1890s and never caught with his pants down, wrote a letter to the press. Next time I'll send along an ear just for jolly. Wouldn't you? I, William Seward, captain of this lushed-up hash-head subway, will quell the Loch Ness Monster with Rotenon and cowboy the white whale. I will reduce Satan to automatic obedience and sublimate subsidiary fiends. I will banish the kangaroo from your swimming pools. I will issue a bull on immaculate birth control. Young Dillinger walked straight out of the house and never looked back. Don't ever look back, kid. You turn into some old cow salt lick. Police bullet in the alley. Broken wings of Icarus. Screams of a burning boy inhaled by the old junkie. Eyes empty as a vast plain.